No, this is not off the mark at all. I think this is exactly what we are talking about. That we're trying to not sell an idea, but we're trying to sell a logic in a sense that this can actually work in that way, hopefully. Yeah, so this I would see this as confirmation and support for what I've been talking about. Yeah.
I think the challenge will come from how you calculate those costs.
Yeah, yeah.
And it has to be certified by the Quality Council of the country. That somebody has to verify it. Otherwise, how do you persuade the consumers that it is indeed so? Because we don't
That's
have any
what- that's the
discussing
point.
about the
Yes.
corporate standard. It has to be ultimately certified, ISO or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah.
we don't trust the corporate sector all the time.
Exactly. So we need organizations that we are not so skeptical about, that we think we can trust, that do these sorts of calculations for us, and that keep an eye on whether people's claims are realistic. And I remember, I think in 2016, I was in India for research on standards, and we met with the director of the Indian Bureau of Standards, somewhere here in Delhi, I think, if I'm not mistaken. A very eloquent, well-spoken, soft-spoken person who gave us lots of really interesting insights. And then towards the end, he said, well, the problem is nobody in India listens to me. And that, for me, was again one of these moments when you realize that people who, in principle, do very important things for the country are maybe not always taken very serious. Anyway, it's a bit of a different anecdote, but it's so the short version is yes, these things are possible. The practicalities of making these sorts of calculations are maybe technically complicated but solvable. But are they politically and culturally accepted? And are there indeed independent organizations that take care of it? Yeah. I see that there is already a one-pager going around. Please don't read it now. I will tell you later what it is about. Just keep it there. Because otherwise you miss the end of this story. And this will come, don't worry, this will come. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about what could be next steps on this, and two colleagues, both from JNU, right? Shardindu and Bhaskar.
Sorry?
Both colleagues from JNU are already getting ready to come into the discussion.
He's coming. I'm still not.
Because during the coffee we already had quite a discussion about how realistic is this and what other things we should talk about when talking about this. So that's exactly, I think, the discussion that we would want to have. But first, to finish it off as an agenda for both research and possible action. Yeah. One of the things we would need to do if we follow this line is to operationalize what that voluntary frugality on the consumption side really is about. Does this exist? Is this a growing phenomena? And if so, how to analyze this, and if you want, how to promote this? Beyond the simplistic idea that for sustainable outcomes we need to consume less. This is in the European discussion. This is how it has become political. Yeah, that right-wing people are saying, yeah, these left-wingers are just saying we should consume less. But that's not the idea. The idea is we should consume differently if we want to consume more sustainably and within planetary boundaries and all of that. Yeah, so it's not about, so at the right-wing side of the political spectrum, they try to tell us that, oh, these people want to take things away from you. Yeah? They want to take away your luxurious lifestyle. So you have to not vote for these left-wing crazy people. Yeah? And our story, in a way, is more complicated. We're saying, well, maybe a bit less, but especially different, and think through and think more carefully about the implications for the environment. Now, next to what we have been sort of talking about on frugal and frugal innovation, there are also a few other approaches at the moment that are really trying to do something very similar, but are using different labels. And because I don't feel competitive towards these other streams of thinking, I've just put them here so that you can also see what others are doing in this regard. The first one is also an Indian researcher, actually, who's based in Germany, Tiwari, and he talks about affordable green excellence. He has written about frugal innovation in the past, and he has decided that this restricts him too much in the European setting, because people think he's talking about making things cheaper. So he has now removed that word, and he is going for the combination of affordable, which sounds a bit less direct towards the cheap domain, yeah? Affordable, and green, which means it is also a sustainability push. So, and then excellence, of course, is a word that Europeans like to use a lot and is everywhere. And in this way, he's trying to capture the attention for the same sort of things that we have been talking about. Yeah, because he's saying that this Dacia car that I talked about earlier is an example of affordable green excellence.
He's still saying the same thing.
He's still saying the same thing, but he's using different words. And we all know that words are important because they say something about ourselves and about how we look at the world. There are now in Nature increasingly articles published about what those researchers call a sufficiency approach. And a sufficiency approach is about you can actually consume less without having less satisfaction. This is especially an American sort of debate, yeah, where they have tried to calculate, don't ask me exactly how, that many American consumers are wasting so many stuff that if they would actually just consume what they really need or what they think they need, they would consume much less than what they are actually buying at present, because so many things that they buy are not being used. And this would be part of what they call a sufficiency approach. A third one by an ex-colleague of mine, he said, yeah, frugal I like, but it should be with a positive word immediately after, and that's prosperity. And he says, if you would now pitch it as frugal prosperity for all, then you're also making clear that you are treating everybody equal. And that maybe this would mean that some people in Europe would need to consume less and people in Africa can consume a bit more. If we would all be at that level of frugal prosperity, wouldn't that be wonderful? I'm not trying to make fun of any of these approaches. They're just different ways of trying to find words to set a process in motion towards these more sustainable, less over-engineered, complicated, sophisticated products that we don't really need. And there are also all sorts of other suggestions. There's, for example, the work by Carlota Perez on the green global age, the green global golden age, actually, as part of what she calls the fifth industrial revolution and the deployment phase in that. If you want to know more about that, I will distribute a list of readings tomorrow in which this is one of the readings. then before we go into the tutorial discussion kind of next step, a brief conclusion from my side. Frugal innovation in Europe, how to move from talking about enforced frugality only towards also talking about and maybe achieving voluntary frugality as a more mainstream choice by relatively more wealthy consumers. Yeah? Is that the direction we can take? And that the policy support for frugal innovation in the European Union is not so much to replace these investments in R&D and formal high-end stuff, because we need that as well. If we want to fight the Russians in Ukraine, we need high-quality missiles and airplanes and whatever, unfortunately. Yeah? So this is not to replace that, but that it is woven into the innovation agenda as a way to make innovation policies in Europe more inclusive and more sustainable. That's the point I was trying to make on this. So that concludes the first session, in a sense, for today, or the presentation. I think the coordinator of the course can also participate in this.
I don't mind. Go ahead. You have some points to make about
Please join me. I feel a bit lonely here.
Norm making, norm
No, I think
internalization.
basically
You need this one for the YouTube.
I'm being recorded.
Of course.
Yeah, I have chosen to forget about that, but of course I have said a few things that may not work in my favor if the AI instruments are starting to check everything that is mentioned about Trump, and then
No, it's fine here.
You will be visible also to others.
No, I don't have any articulate thoughts as such, but I don't know how I should. This would be good enough, or no?
Okay.
No, we can sit there.
Hesitating.
Yeah.
Okay, sit. No, we have to take the center stage because it is about changing a norm. Okay, many of you would know him. Those who do not, he teaches philosophy at the Center for Philosophy in our university. And he's also an active member of our cluster of frugality studies. And recently he has published a book on collective responsibility. That's how
That's not the title. Yes.
yeah, on collective responsibility. I'm forgetting the exact name. And there is good amount of discussion happening around that book. I get to see reviews popping up and trying to understand the meaning.
Yeah. No, thanks for this opportunity. My specialization is basically ethics, so I try to see things from that perspective, and I'm completely handicapped when it comes to practice and sort of concretizing things at the empirical level. So I think what we were basically talking about is this framework that Peter had shown us just half an hour back, which is very interesting, and I really liked it, particularly the point that he made about this is the model that we are talking about, that there isn't any guarantee that we are going in the right direction all the time. It could also be the other way around, right? Yeah. So the moral progress is not an assured sort of goal, so to speak. It could go down any point of time. Depends upon the structural things. Depends upon the culture, politics, and so on and so forth. So now the issue here is the tipping point. I mean, when does a society realize that this is it, and now we have to come up with some regulation, we have to come up with some standardization. Okay, it sounds great as a value, as an informal, at the informal level, it's great, but then when it comes to sort of regulation, or when it comes to sort of making things clear to people, whether through the institution of law or otherwise, there I think we have to be a bit more careful. We have to see things more transparently, how whether we are really able to sort of make it, whether this value is going to be acceptable to every one of us. I mean, that's where the problem lies. Sometimes you can present things as an attractive idea. It looks good on paper and it becomes a fashion, but then over a period of time it could just die down, right? Once the fashion is over, everything gets over, right? There isn't any sort of guarantee about it. So this is where the problem lies, I think, and that's where I was talking about. It's not just setting as a universal norm, so to speak. I mean, it's not that. I mean, human rights. You have mentioned about human rights, the way it sort of standardized, the way it was standardized at one point of time, and there's always a clash between this human rights framework and at the regional level, at the concrete level, how you might find it good, but when it comes to local issues, you have different reservation about that kind of rights, and that's exactly what that's exactly the point of contestation when it comes to refugee, when it comes to immigration. I mean, it sounds great when you talk about immigration, when you talk about global citizens, but when it strikes you hard at the local level, when you are told that your jobs are taken away by these immigrants, you start developing a different perspective altogether. I mean, this is exactly, I think, where we should be a little careful about. I mean, it sounds great as an ethics. It's it's a great value, but does it really work for me? Is it really going to be effective for me? I mean, what am I going to get out of it if I start living a frugal life, or a life that is believed to be desirable, aspirational, fashionable, so on and so forth? So that's where ethics comes into the picture. And I was talking about the emotional part of the picture. Somehow it's not that the reason is going to guide us towards that value. We should also have the motivational aspect. We also have to be clear about the motivating factors that are going to be accompanied by that reason, which suggests that this is good. This is good for for future. Resources are very limited, and if you want to have a good life, a desirable life, a sustainable life, this is the value that we should be focusing on. But then the main the problem here is that how am I going to be enthused by that? It's one thing to talk about the ideal. It's a completely different thing to ensure that I'm going to really follow that ideal. It's one thing to hold a proposition at the propositional level. It's a great thought, it's a great ideal, it's at the ethical level it sounds great, I ought to be doing things like that. But then it's completely different thing when I have to drag myself all the way up to that point where I see myself as getting it done. That's where the emotional part becomes very, very crucial. What kind of emotional sort of aspects that we can talk about when you talk about frugality as a value, right? Yeah, so
from this discussion, I suddenly reminded of, I think I read it in only one paper. I'll give you the reference tomorrow when we give you more sort of references for the discussion. There was one paper on frugality and in consumption. And the paper tried to make a few sort of, tried to operationalize the term frugal. And it was written in 1990s, late 90s maybe, when, before it became a fashion. In that way. One of the meaning of frugality or frugal was heretic, being heretic. So sort of doing things which others don't do. Okay. Now, I mean, so which is at odds with the more social way of doing things. But if society is going in this direction, I'll go in the reverse direction. And that was taken as a measure.
The hippie culture.
Of frugality. So I thought I just add it to your discussion and then say, okay, how do you then look at motivation of being frugal? I mean, if this is something which is also an acceptable way.
Yeah. When we are talking about motivation here, it just, I mean, the way, let's say, Peter talked about child labor. Why do people now hesitate to have a child in your house as a domestic laborer? Because you are concerned about the society that you are a part of. You are going to be criticized. You know that there is going to be a lot of benefit. I mean, the lower, wage and obedience and other things, right? It's going to be working for you, perfect. Everything will be fine. You are going to get the service. But then of course, you are afraid of the law. Law is going to go after you. But also you are afraid of the societal pressure, how you are going to be seen as someone who is recruiting a child as a domestic help. I mean, that is something that works as some sort of a force, so to speak. It works. And I think when you talk about a frugal life or a life that is prudent, I mean, it's not just in economic terms, but also in general, there has to be some sort of societal incentives cultural incentives, so to speak, that I should be getting, right? You're going to be driven by that. It's not just fashion, because fashion is, again, one could say that, well, in fashion also that's there. If let's say Japanese minimalism that we are talking about, but then the problem is that it's not going to be sustainable, right? There isn't any guarantee, because the rationale is so thin or fragile, and it can sway any which way. But that's exactly where I think things are very different in the case of frugality. Of course, emotions are not everything as we are talking about. But what I'm saying is that they have, reason has to be accompanied by this sort of emotional angles, so to speak.
Put instinct as part of emotion, or where does instinct lie?
Instinct in what sense?
I mean, instinctive work, instinctive things. I mean, plain English maybe, but instinct is also used by, for example, Paul Feyerabend.
You're right.
In the End of Reason. Is it emotion? I think it's closer to emotion. Right?
Yeah, it's something that sort of, without any sort of systematic thought process, you just felt that this is the right thing to do, and that's it could be intuition, but something that is very sudden, and that's the basic.
Intuition can be instinctive also.
Could be in some sense, but
yeah. Reassuring, because then we take into account research.
Yeah. No, the emotions are, I would say that it's very important when you talk about this sort of value, when you really want to ensure that this is, we have to really work on standardizing this sort of value and see that this is the future and this is important for us.
Okay.
Right.
I have one question for you. How do you then, there is, if I sort of summarize, if not summary, I mean, maybe one thing that you said is one, the challenge comes in walking, walking the talk.
Yes,
So
yes.
I say something
Yeah.
for everyone, but when I have to do that myself, there are challenges that I encounter and so on. On that count, I mean, we all celebrate Gandhi. And he is also seen as somebody who is an icon of frugality. So what do you think had motivated Gandhi?
Yeah.
How do you analyze that?
Interesting question. I didn't come here with preparation. I never realized it. Yeah. But
Don't know that.
yeah, it was
come with
very
preparation.
nothing. I mean, I just
But
thought
you
that
are
I'd be.
the only one among us.
No, that's just an
who
excuse.
are already always ready to talk
Yeah.
about it.
No, I had a meeting at 4:30. I cancelled it. But anyway, it's very interesting. I really enjoyed the discussion. No, I think that's a very interesting. Gandhi is an interesting figure. Well, interesting is a very diplomatic term. But yes, when it comes to simplicity, when it comes to ethical life, when it comes to statesmanship, when it comes to the ideal figure, you have Gandhi, you have Mother Teresa. But then, when we are talking about frugality or ethics of frugality, are we asking you to renunciate? Are you asking for renunciation? Mm-hmm. That's my question. I mean, what's your response? Are we really asking you to sacrifice?
Well, this is the less that bullet in his last slide.
Yeah, this is what the opponents make of the story. They say they are trying to make you do less, so you don't want that.
Right.
I don't think it should be seen as a sacrifice. Of course, it's in relative terms, always.
Yes.
But if I think of what could be a relatively more frugal and sustainable lifestyle for well-educated young Europeans, I'm thinking about maybe not going 2 or 3 times a year on a ski holiday to Austria.
You're right.
Because what is the added value of that third visit?
You're right. Right.
So we could do things somewhat less probably, and we could do other things probably with our time.
You're right.
So I would see it more in that sense. So not in the sense of absolute sacrifice, but much more in a sense of relative moderation on certain issues.
Yeah.
And maybe a deeper, different kind of satisfaction and content search on other domains.
Right.
But this is also, I haven't prepared this. I'm just doing this like you, just sort of just like that.
Yeah, that's very interesting because in the subcontinent, when you talk about Gandhi, or when you talk about philosopher, you have a particular sort of imagination, right? It has to be a ascetic form of life. Asceticism is as if it's a part of the package of frugality. Are we really talking about that? I think not.
No.
Definitely not. But then we admire those individuals who were ready to sacrifice, renunciate everything and adopt an ascetic sort of form of life.
Probably,
and that's the life that we want. Commonsensically speaking. But that's not what we are talking about, I think, right?
No.
So it's the middle part. That's how I understand it. What we are talking about here, perhaps the minimalist path. In a way, and a balancing act. Middle path.
That's
Buddhist way of life.
I think
it's a middle path.
That is true. Maybe we should have this conversation somewhere or after.
Yeah, middle path is a big deal in philosophy and ethics. But that requires a different deliberation altogether.
But my question was different. Not what Gandhi did exactly, but he is somebody who is seen as walking the talk. So what was his motivation, or how do you explain his actions?
Right.
Reason, emotion, or what kind of emotion? Because I'm trying to understand this because this might give us some analytical sort of way out to understand. Okay, how to do this
Hmm.
myself, whatever I am doing. If I have to be criminal also, for example, I might say that this is good that he was killed.
Hmm.
He did that and so on. But can I myself be a killer?
Yeah.
Of someone who is irritating me or who I think is violating all my rights and whatnot.
Yeah.
So whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So the question is, what kind of reasons
Yeah.
or emotions play a role in doing that, in walking the talk?
Yeah. No, when we talk, I think when we are talking about emotions, it's about when you try to establish that as a mainstream value or virtue. I mean, you have to work on the emotional part as well, right? That's what in that sense. But the first part of your question, I think you're talking about how do you go about it. I think there's a very interesting paper by Peter Singer. I'm sure some of you are familiar with. It's a big utilitarian philosopher, Australian philosopher, who is at Princeton. So he wrote a paper long back in 1973. It's called Famine, Affluence and Morality. And the paper starts with, Bengal famine. So he comes up with this thought experiment. So he says that imagine you are going to your office with your usual standard official dress, and then there's a shallow pond when a couple of kids are sort of swimming, and then one of them is getting drowned. What are you going to do? Are you going to jump in the water and rescue the child, or you would be thinking about your dress, about your time, and you choose to ignore that and leave that child there, letting him die, and then you will be sort of going ahead with your own ways. What are you supposed to do? I mean, the standard ethical intuitive answer is that you got to save that kid. I mean, it's a matter of life and death. You could make a difference, right? You could make a difference by sacrificing a little bit, by letting your clothes get dirtied, and that's possible for all of us, perhaps. I mean, that's exactly what he is sort of perhaps trying to suggest. What he's saying, that anything that is of comparable worth, if you don't have to really sacrifice much, you should be ready to give it away. I mean, in ethics we talk about supererogatory actions which are moral, but yet they are not. They don't come as a call of a duty, as it were. They're good, but you are not necessarily required to do it, but it's good if you could do that. So perhaps when we are talking about frugality, that's the middle path that we should be thinking about. I mean, we are not asking you to sort of really jump. If you don't know swimming, you just go and try to rescue the kid. We are not. I mean, definitely first you have to be sure that you know, that you are confident that you could save the kid, and then go about
yourself.
it. Yeah, and save yourself. That's your first duty, right? That's how the middle path perhaps can be thought about, and the ethical path can be substantiated.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
I have this kind of an example going on, or I don't know, maybe it's like a conundrum. So here in India, we use buckets to shower.
Yeah.
Yes. And if I am not wrong, in European context, the baths or the showers are usually with a shower head.
Correct.
And considering the amount of water used, the bucket is more frugal in terms of the amount of water being used.
Yeah.
Okay. At the same time, the bucket itself is made of plastic. It is not so sustainable,
Yeah.
but it is cost effective. In European case, it is sustainable, but maybe in water terms, it's not so sustainable. An easy solution could be if everyone in India goes back to using a steel bucket or something, which we used to have, but now it's kind of out of fashion, because if you are going to use such a bucket, it is considered that you are not so modern. So here is like a conundrum of
There is, I mean,
the intersection of sustainability, frugality, and fashion, or the internalization of what we are using because of certain costs and because it's not, used in a very good manner, or maybe because we have the means so we can just shower the shower head. So
yeah, it's a. Can I just
Yeah,
take
please go
because
ahead.
this thing, just a week back, this was going on in social media. Trump, after Trump coming to the power, so I think he put that administrative, what they call it, order, and I think there's a law or sort of a norm, the paper straw, right? And the idea is that it comes with the plastic, right? So it was used as it was an excuse for them to sort of, well, you see, it's not frugal. I mean, you were talking about environmental friendly thing, but it isn't. It comes with the plastic, right? So there's also sort of a flip side to it. I mean, if you are not sort of talking about the political side, but yes, there is a flip side to it. Yeah.
I would want to add something here. Can we just, from the very basic elementary level, start inducing the idea that frugality is not sacrificing something? So, if we are actually talking about going to the future, we can look back a little and go to the past. Like in India, even in Rajasthan, the walls and the doors are made in a way there was no electricity back then. But now, if you understand the architecture, it is actually useful for us now even. So frugality is not sacrificing or maybe giving it away, using something differently, and maybe at a very basic level we can start teaching kids, because now when we're sitting here, we are fighting for funds and everything in our researches. You cannot tell us to go about being frugal for our research areas, but we can go back and teach those little kids to have that idea imbibed in them, so that when they are into something, when they are actually creating something, or they are talking about frugal innovations, they have those ideas already instilled in them, and maybe they can rack their brains in a way to find certain solutions to be as fashionable and frugal at the same time.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I like the basic idea that, let's say, many people who are skeptical about this, they would immediately think of sacrifice. Indeed, that
Yeah.
oh, that means we have to sacrifice. So that's not what we're going to do, of course.
Yeah.
So making clear up front that that's not what it is about, but it is about doing things differently and more cleverly and
you have to
more.
find clever. Like, I'll just give you an example. Like, we keep on filling our notebooks every year. Why can't we just have a little session once the year is done, and then we can just make another handmade paper sort of a thing out of those notebooks, and we can use that. That's just a dump, right? So that's sort of how we are climbing the ladder.
Mhm.
That's just
Yeah.
an idea.
No, of course. But I think here we are also using the word sacrifice in a very general
Yeah.
Yeah.
manner. I mean, I
True.
mean, any change in consumption pattern can be seen as a sacrifice. Sacrifice, after all, is not so
It's subjective.
Yeah.
Loose.
Yeah, no, I think there's something in ethics which often we talk about over demandingness, right? And there's this framework called utilitarianism, and utilitarian philosophers are accused of being over demanding. Here's an example. There's this philosopher from I think Princeton, Shally Kagan, Yale actually. Shally Kagan, he comes up with this interesting example. So utilitarianism, basically, utilitarianism, the basic principle, it's about maximizing utility. That's the thing. Yeah. So imagine this guy is able to save just $10 a week. He goes for some sort of part-time job, and he is able to save just $10 a week. And every week he thinks that he should spend that money for some good, meaningful sort of exercise. So he also sort of has a great interest in movies. So he goes to movie hall with that $10, and then there's this bunch of Oxfam guys sitting there in front of the movie hall. Then the initial interaction takes place. Then they're saying that, would you care for donation, some bit of donation? Think about the kids dying in sub-Saharan countries, and you are here for movie. That's great, but then do you consider donating a bit of it for those kids? We are collecting money, and let's imagine that he's a believer in utilitarian philosophy. So he said, yes, that's something which I really admire, a great thought. That's how it should be. That's how we should guide our ethical life. So he's just donated. Said, no, I sacrifice this. I am not going to watch the movie. Next week he comes back with 10 bugs. Again the same demand is made because children are still dying there. And he said, well, it's a bit too much. Shouldn't be perhaps doing it, but okay, I'm a great believer in utilitarianism. Perhaps I should just give it. Third time he comes back and these guys are still sitting there. He says, enough is enough. There's something called personal project, which I value enormously, which is ethically important for me. I can't go on giving money for these kids who I have never met. I don't seem to have any obligation. I don't have any emotional connection with those kids. Why should I keep donating the $10 every week? I should have some money for myself, my own personal project, and I want to develop my intellectual horizon, and that's very important. I mean, this is where utilitarianism, in a way, the accusations, according to the accusation, that it fails. I mean, it fails to show that there are certain things which are very, very important for us and we care about them. Now, it's interesting to see how do we, as an admirer of frugality discourse, respond to that kind of criticism if it comes on our way, which is sort of a critical point.
That's a point, because if we keep saying that we have to, people should find it useful to be able to accept it, then are we not also falling in that trap of utilitarianism, where they will use it as long as it is useful, but consumptions have marginal utility. So you keep consuming this frugal narrative, so on and so forth, that at some point they say, no, there is no more utility in being frugal or being sort of agreeable to this frugality narrative. Because it's not about value, it's about your utility. How much utility you are deriving, either by being frugal or by accepting the frugality narrative. And at some point you will feel like I'm full. Then you start becoming non-frugal again. Are we doing that?
No, I think the point here is about the demand, sacrifice. The frugality discourse is asking you need to minimize your sort of consumption level from point A to point C. Slowly you have to reduce your consumption level, and that's how you are going to do good for the society, right? That's what we are suggesting here. So where does it end? That's my question. Where does it end? I mean, how much can I go on sacrificing things in the name of frugality?
That, the fine line between being self-interested and being selfish. So, although I may not have a duty of care although that is, to my mind, a very extreme example, a life and death situation of saving somebody who is drowning. But in that, the calculation seems to shift in a different direction. We are still rational, knowing that if we can swim, we can help. If we can't swim, then we have more of a problem rather than the solution.
I mean, the thought is that you don't have any obligation if you don't know how to swim. You don't. I mean, that's what the utilitarian said. The obligation comes in only when you are capable of being. There's a principle called ought implies can. You ought to do this provided that you have that ability to perform that. If you don't,
these frugal innovators tend to have a rationale which serves their context. If you look at it, it is very well meaning to their context. So it is in a sense represents what is immediately of interest to them. The fact that I use the same paper cup twice or thrice before discarding it off is reducing, say, resource consumption, but still retaining your capacity to use the same thing without its utility going down in some way.
I think we have to also agree with the fact that different people will have different tolerance, acceptance, where their utility will be zero, and so on. So we are not really talking about a uniform level of achievement in terms of everyone will be like, will have the attire of Gandhi.
I mean, here's what the utilitarians say, the solution. You know, when they have to respond to that, the reasonable person thing. What would a reasonable, a virtuous person, or an average reasonable person is expected to do that?
Virtues and reasons are also subjective, right?
In what sense?
They can be circumstantial.
I mean, there are certain virtues which are universal, right? Being truthful, right? Being honest. I mean, there are also, of course.
They work on forensic science, so they have enough examples to show.
I mean, no, see, these are normative value. These are ideal. I mean, it's good if you are truthful and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, that's how we are also projecting frugality as a norm guiding phenomenon. I mean, it's nobody's forcing us. You know, I think we also need to give enough sort of space that it doesn't become very regressive. It doesn't become very sort of top-down, sort of didactic kind of value. That it's going to dictate it. That's how this should be enforced.
I think that is important. And in fact, in economics department, I am part of a research advisory committee now. That person is working on rebound effect. That you make these efficient technologies with the assumption that they will reduce the level of whatever pollution, work, whatever you count as efficiency. But then as they become more efficient, you use them more often, and you end up accumulating more of that which you wanted to reduce. And therefore, in the context of in the context of sustainable efficiency, maybe frugality also, where if it gives rise to a rebound effect, what will happen?
These are
or
interesting.
Can it give rise to a rebound effect?
Yeah.
That this less,
and then given a chance, you just go and
lead
spare.
to more and more of something. Or that particular thing by another person.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Yeah. But that's where the problem lies. How do we mainstreamize it? It becomes. I mean, that's what I was talking about. I think the stigma and other things, the emotional aspects, become very, very important when you have to really internalize it, make it. This is it. I mean, there isn't any escape. It's not. Sort of it's not for recreational purpose. So it's not just for it's forever.
And one more thing maybe to both of you, it's a question from the coordinator, is something that I was having a discussion with her yesterday, that there is a dynamism everywhere. I mean, so when we are asking for frugality, we also should accept that, okay, we are probably trying to motivate people to believe in or act in that way for a certain number of period, years, generations, and not really forever. It's not right that, okay, I'm fixing the future forever by just trying to say that, okay, be frugal and that's it. Because there must be a dynamism and there must be some movement. I mean, it's not that that's a stationary way of.
It's not an end game in that sense.
And then, what kind of a futuristic projection we make for frugality?
But values don't come that way, right?
Values don't
come in that way, like a certain period of time. Let's taste it.
No, not to taste it, but values do change.
They do.
Right.
Some values.
Some values.
Yeah.
I mean, we are still not sure whether frugality would count in those set of values or other set of values which would never change.
Yeah.
But then, if we are talking about, suppose, a more sort of temporary set of values which would change, which we agree that okay, will change. Then, what is that future projection that we are making, and for how long? And is that also a relevant question?
That's a relevant question, but I don't have an answer. Because also this approach and other things that we've been talking about, it's more about a sense of direction in terms of getting us out of the situation that we are in, where we consume way beyond the planetary boundaries at global level. And we need, in order to have a future at all, to find ways to operate within planetary boundaries again. And one way that may help to get us there is to pay more attention to the ideas and the value of frugality. But I see that as a temporary transition process towards a situation that might be relatively more sustainable. And I very much agree with what Bhaskar was also saying, and what I mentioned as a result of my Trump comment, that these norms do not necessarily only go in what we would be seeing as the positive direction of moving towards more sustainable, more inclusive, etc. It is much more complicated and difficult to control dynamism, in which our roles as social scientists, I think, is to try and interpret the processes as they are unfolding, and if possible to give a push towards a more progressive, positive stage for as far as we can imagine that, and that we can contribute to that. But there's no end game in that sense.
Yeah, and I wish I had also requested Amir Ali to come, political scientist. And he has an interesting take on that. He says, you see, frugality is more social. That is a social understanding of, if you call it sacrifice, suppose consuming less. The statist version of that is austerity. So if we sort of generate more popular acceptance for frugality, the state might come in with all kinds of austerity measures, and then it is no longer a bottom-up approach. It's a top-down approach. It's actually, pushing you to consume less, to spend less.
Carpooling.
Well, carpooling is still okay.
Yeah, that's good.
It's more social.
Yeah, but it comes from the state, right?
It comes from the state. Saying that you should have only one of this and two of that and so on, rationing or whatever. I mean, you can think of that way. And then it can lead to a very different set of behavioral responses from the society, maybe.
Well, this could mean, if you would take that to its extreme, that if the norm emergence entrepreneurs are successful in promoting frugality, and in the end the government will take it over and internalize it, and will force everybody to live like Gandhi, then I don't think we would, when looking back, would feel that we have made a sensible contribution.
The rebound thing will happen.
Then it will be actually subjected to rebound.
And then it would be enforced frugality.
From what I understand as a law background, the the norm internalization seems to bring that crystallizing effect or a sort of finality to this whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's final, it's renegotiating itself, first of all. Secondly, the aspirational goal of internalization seems to be a de minimis acceptance of legitimate behavior. And even the law says that jumping a red light is a suboptimal behavior, as in optimal in the sense that two cars could collide, certain consequences which are foreseeable could arise.
Yeah.
That's the reason for you, right? But saying that there is a minimally acceptable behavior that you can cross a red light if, you know, unfortunately the traffic light analogy has its own pitfalls, but the very idea of a minimally acceptable legitimate behavior is often, for people, especially in terms of consolidation in law, the more formal system, is misunderstood to be that this is something which we will accept, although which is slightly aberrant or erroneous, but given the fact that we have a large population or we have certain road conditions and therefore certain forms of driving behavior needs to be discounted on the ground. But then that's a very pragmatic kind of a consideration, right? Now, at any given point of time, that dynamic is always shifting. No two flyovers, no two normal highways, no two city roads have the same dynamic at all times. So, in terms of what is minimally acceptable, it's again, you know, something which is a bit of a shifting goalpost, if I were to use the term.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
And as far as the law's aspiration is concerned, it's as far as for certainty, which is unfortunately what we don't think we can offer.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Please, yeah.
As far as you have said, sir, for example, one has to be, the society's morality checks one individual. For example, that you have to separate the garbage, and that is something which is kind of the neighbor is checking on you. So you kind of do it. So are we kind of saying that an individual can be changed by an organization or by a per se society? But then again, someone needs to be idealistic, like you said, reasonable virtue. Yeah. Reasonable. That someone has to be there who creates a change. So one way we are saying that individual is rather inspired by the society, but the other way we are kind of saying that there needs to be someone at the helm to.
No, I think the reasonable thing that's at the normative level. I mean, the idea hovers around over and above everybody. I mean, that's the thought that you have. This is how a reasonable or virtuous person would be doing. I mean, so you are driven by that thought. I mean, there isn't it's like perfect market kind of thing. There isn't any perfect market, but it's an important thought, right? Economists can't do business with that ideal, right? So, so it's that kind of thought. I mean, there isn't any reasonable person. I mean, there isn't like a GDP. You know, that's exactly how how it works. Like
concept which is in civil law countries like
Yeah.
UK, tort laws is a form of
Tort law,
liability
yes.
where a duty of care is assumed
Assumed.
or inferred on the basis that a reasonable
Person
should
would-
have foreseen, should have understood.
yes,
to-
that's how you judged. That's how you judge.
In that
Yeah.
sense, without any concrete or rigid principle, the standpoint of a reasonable man has been criticized. Even a doctor being a reasonable man is not a reasonable man, he's a reasonable expert with a knowledge of a certain kind. So if he does something during operative procedures which may be frugal but ends up causing unintended consequences. This is thing we keep on hearing about, managing the unintended consequences of our actions.
Yeah.
It could also be that.
True. Yeah. No, of course there are problems with that thought, but yeah.
No, I think we have had a smooth transition from the first lecture and to the second lecture where we wanted to talk about lessons and limitations and cross learning. I think we actually ended up doing that without any slide, where we tried to bring certain examples from different settings, be it India, Europe, other examples, and tried to sort of see how they how they contribute to a discussion on frugality. So,
I just want.
But
yes.
there is one more
There's
slide
one more
and
slide.
more story. So
Okay, one more story.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mother, Professor, yeah.
Very interesting debate, and I think this framework looks very nice. I was just wondering, how do you see frugal behavior? Is frugal behavior rational behavior?
Is it?
Rational.
behavior.
Ah, yes. Well, this is something that has been sort of looming
Large, yeah.
in the room.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, but so
We're
it's
actually discussing.
yeah. So it's very good that you have caught on that while just coming in and then listening a little bit. I think we are arguing yes, but at the same time we are saying if it is only rational, that's not enough. So it also has to appeal at an emotional level to individuals and perhaps collectives. And then there is a question of who will own it, who will distribute it. Is it a matter of naming and shaming? Is it a matter of the law trying to implement it? And these are all different options. But I think what in the last 4 days we have come to agree upon is that if there is not also a rationality to becoming more frugal, then it's a lost cause.
Yes.
Can I summarize it like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's a very good observation. Apparently, this is quite clear for someone who comes in and then looks at this and a little bit of the discussion. It took us 4 days to get to this point. But
How I got with it, what is the system?
Sure.
When you write beautifully summarizes the entire thing, nouns emerges in response to either altruism, idealism, activism, commitment, and pursuit. So these are things are the values. So nouns always emerges in response to a values. If there is a values, then several nouns will come out to fulfill or to achieve certain values. Okay. Altruism could be achieved through several nouns. So frugality could be one of the nouns.
yeah.
Frugality could be one of the nouns that individual or organization or industry could adopt in their either the personal life, organization life, or the collective life.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But then the question could be that can there be another norm which is completely opposite to frugality but can also achieve some of these in the context
Yeah.
of frugality?
Yeah, there's
Then
al-
we're in quite deep water.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could be there,
Huh?
but what you were talking just before, a rebounding effect.
Yes.
That's the rebounding.
This is, I think, if I can, So when you talk about, often we use norms and values interchangeably, but I think this is how we think, because values are more basic, right? The norms are sort of, in a way, guiding principles to get at that value. So in that sense, frugality, I would say, a value, not a norm in that sense. Of course, it is a normatively loaded sort of phenomenon, but the norms as such, norms, rules, rules are like that, right? Rules are like that. Rules are sort of, the channels, as it were, or the routes through which you arrive at the basic value. That's how I say.
Supported by the basic values.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
This is an
Thank you.
appearance
Yes.
of a philosopher
Yes,
we wanted for the last 3
Yes.
days.
Thanks.
So this was an unscheduled performance without preparation. Many thanks for that. Now I have one final thing, which is actually getting you ready a little bit for tomorrow. So there is one other slide, one separate slide, and there is a handout. the separate slide is also yes, that's the one. Thanks. Is the battery gone? Yeah. All right. Okay, now one of the things that I was taught in a course to become a better teacher is never to distribute something in class, because what then happens is people go like this and they don't listen anymore. And the one way to deal with that is to use this trick, so that people they say, oh yeah, no, I'm not reading, I'm paying attention. So please listen first. What you have in front of you is the general description of a simulation game. Yeah, a simulation game is about something that is maybe partly an invention. In this case, actually, is partly also based on something that has really happened in Tanzania, actually. So it's not about India, but it is relevant to this whole idea of a frugal innovation and these different actors, if you want to call it Quadruple Helix, or so there are two people involved that have, as entrepreneurs, developed an innovation. There is a multinational company that wants to buy this innovation. There are a few people in local government who have different ideas about how this should happen, and there are a few other things that I'm not yet talking about. Now, the basic idea of a simulation game is that everybody has a role. So you play not yourself, but you play one of these people. Yeah? So what we will do tomorrow is we will play that game. And tomorrow itself, we will decide who will play which role. Yeah? And with each role, you get another document with more details about who you are, and what are your motivations and your incentives and fears in some cases. Yeah? So what you have got now is the general information about the story. This is what everybody knows. But the individual thing that you will get tomorrow is secret. Well, it's secret to the other players. Because if the others know what it is you want to get out of it, then you would spoil the game. Yeah? Now the process of doing that is such that tomorrow we will, I will first do a short lecture about how to negotiate and what comes into play. But the main thing is the game itself. We will then first, because we have more than enough people for each of the roles, so we will probably play on 3 or 4 or 5 different tables, depending on how many people show up tomorrow. Yeah? And then we will first, all the people that have the same role will sit together. And they will talk through their additional information. So what is it that we really want to get out of this? Yeah, because this is a negotiation game, in a sense. Then we will do the game itself. So each of the ones that play role A will go to a table where they will meet one Mr. B or Mrs. C, D, and E. Then you will have time, and I will give some instructions tomorrow about how to do the negotiation. And then we will come together again and we will find out how similar or how different the outcomes of the negotiation are. And this is the second time that I'm doing this. The first time the outcomes were quite different. And people were really going like, huh? Did you agree to that? Or how did he get away with doing? So it's important that you play your role seriously, that you that you are not taken for a ride by the others, because this is what a negotiation is all about. At the same time, all players have an interest to come to an end for the game. Yeah? An end that is good for you, and hopefully also you have some kind of inclination that it would be good, that others would also be reasonably happy, because that is the intention of a negotiation, that you think you got what you want and the others are not unhappy. Yeah, this is sort of a clumsy summary of a 250-page book on negotiation skills. Okay. So the game is called The Elephant, and you can read why that is. The short version is the elephant has the best smell of all animals in the universe. An elephant can smell water 10 kilometers away. And the medical instrument that is developed here has to do with smell, the capacity to smell carefully. Okay, then, so I want you to read the general text on the case between now and tomorrow 2:30, so that everybody is on the same level of information, and then we will make the division of who will do what. Usually it's best if people don't give their preferences, but they just accept the role that they are given. But if there is one particular person that you really don't want to be, just let me know, and I will try and keep that in mind. Yeah. Otherwise, if there is one person that you really would like to play, then that's also possible. The other thing that I would like you to do, and maybe it's easier if this slide is also shared digitally to all the participants, so that you can find that website easily instead of now having to write it or type it. This is a website where you can do a small questionnaire on your conflict style. What kind of person are you in a negotiation game? Are you sort of a Trump? Or are you more like a soft, easy person, but you're tough? Yeah, or what is it? There are sort of basic styles, and I will talk about that tomorrow in the lecture on negotiation. But it's good if you do this beforehand, so that when I come to that discussion about these different styles, that I can ask, so who is of this style and who is of that style, and then we can have a brief discussion about that. Well, that's it in terms of the preparation for tomorrow. The uncertain thing in a way is the number of people that will be here. I think now there are a few less than on average this week. I don't know what the situation will be tomorrow. Maybe the 2-pager also needs to be distributed to those digitally. Okay, if they want to show up tomorrow, and otherwise they would be unprepared. And then tomorrow morning I will send you the individual secret things, and then if you make printouts of that as well, then we are all set for tomorrow. Are there any questions on this for now? No? Okay. Shardindo and I have discussed this a bit. It is meant as a more fun form of sort of finalizing things and maybe internalizing some of these things in relation to the different actors in the quadruple helix who may, or not may, who have different interests. And that can lead to all sorts of conflicts. And of course, I assume none of you is going to shout tomorrow or hit somebody else, but it depends a bit on how serious you want to take this. Yeah? I want you to treat it as a fun way, but try to do it as seriously as possible, to use also the information in the document to prepare and play according to the script that is given to you. And of course, we know that improvisation always is an important asset in any circumstance. So the one thing I would like you not to do tomorrow is to come to me and say, yeah, there's nothing on this, so I don't know how to do it. Just improvise. Yeah? Have fun. And try to get the best deal possible for your agent or actor. Yeah? Okay. So see you tomorrow then. Yeah, have a good evening. Let's hope we have fun with this tomorrow.